I got back to Colorado Springs 3 weeks ago, after 9 months in Afghanistan. The Army calls it transitional leave. I call it learning how to live without incoming mortar fire and 4 a.m. briefings. My body's here, but my head's still somewhere between Kabul and the sound of generators. The first week home, I rebuilt the front steps of my old house. The second week, I replaced the sink and the porch light. It's what I do, fix things that don't talk back. That Thursday, I was in my garage, elbow deep in my Jeep's transmission, when my phone buzzed. I ignored it. The hum of an engine makes more sense than most people. It buzzed again. And again. I wiped my hands on a rag and picked it up. A notification from Instagram glowed across the screen. Final fitting for the big day. Vanessa and Evan. For a second, I thought it was some influencer ad. Then, I saw her face, my sister, Vanessa. White satin, smiling at the camera like she just solved world peace. My jaw locked. I scrolled. Photos of my mom helping her zip the dress. My dad in the background holding coffee. Comments from cousins, aunts, even people I barely remember from high school. Everyone congratulating her. Everyone except me. I checked the caption again. Wedding next month? Next month? I closed the app and called my mom. She picked up on the second ring. Rachel, you're back already? Her voice was sugar over nerves. I've been back for 3 weeks, I said. Why didn't anyone tell me about Vanessa's wedding? Silence. I could hear her exhale, the kind of pause people use to rearrange their lies. Sweetheart, you've been so busy with the Army I didn't think. Mom, I cut her off. I just saw her in a wedding dress. You didn't think what? That I'd notice? She sighed. Vanessa wanted a quiet ceremony. She thought maybe it'd be better if I wasn't there. Another pause. You can be intense. She didn't want any tension. Evan's family is very traditional. He's not used to, strong personalities. Strong personalities, I repeated. That's one way to describe a combat engineer. Please don't make this about you, she said, soft but sharp. Let your sister have her day. I bit down on a laugh that didn't sound funny. Got it. Wouldn't want to ruin her day with my existence. She tried to pivot. You could send a card, maybe something thoughtful. She'll appreciate the gesture. I hung up before I said something I couldn't take back. For a long minute, I just sat in the garage staring at the dusty sunlight slicing through the open door. My family had planned an entire wedding without me. Not forgotten, not overlooked, excluded. Deliberately. My phone kept buzzing texts from old family friends, notifications about bridal showers and rehearsals. My cousin Kelly posted a picture of the bridesmaids trying on dresses. My mom was tagged, laughing in the comments. I clicked the location. Aspen Creek Lodge. A luxury venue in the mountains, the kind of place that costs more than my annual hazard pay. I scrolled until the screen blurred. I'd spent years helping my sister pay off the mess she made from her cafe venture. $22,000 to be exact. I never brought it up again, never asked for repayment, but apparently, that didn't buy me an invitation. I poured myself coffee, black and bitter, and sat at the kitchen table staring at the wall. The framed photo of my family from 10 years ago hung crooked above the thermostat. We looked normal. My dad in his veteran cap, my mom with her hand on Vanessa's shoulder, and me standing a step back, in uniform, half smiling. I remembered that day. Mom made me change out of my fatigues for the picture, said it made people uncomfortable. I took the frame down, straightened it, and hung it back up. Useless habit. Some things stay crooked no matter how many times you fix them. That night, I tried to let it go. I worked on the Jeep until my knuckles split, then fell asleep on the couch with the TV humming in the background. At 2 a.m., my phone lit up again. A message from my dad. Heard you're upset. Don't be. It's just a small wedding. Vanessa didn't want to bother you while you're adjusting. Didn't want to bother me. The next morning, I drove out to my parents' house in Littleton. It's the same Victorian I grew up in, white trim, porch swing, flags for every holiday. My dad was in the garage, polishing his old Mustang, pretending not to see me pull up. He looked up eventually. Rachel, you're home. Yeah. Looks like the whole family's busy planning something. He nodded without meeting my eyes. It's just, you know how your mother gets. She wants everything perfect. Perfect, I said. Right. And perfect apparently doesn't include me. He rubbed his hands on a rag. Evan's a good guy. Works in logistics, got some big defense contracts lined up. He's done well. Defense contracts? I frowned. With the Department of Defense? Something like that, he said too quickly. He actually asked me to look over some paperwork. Thought maybe you could give him a few pointers. I sent him one of your old award citations to show how professional the Corps is. You sent him my Army paperwork? He hesitated. Just the summary. Nothing classified. Jesus, Dad. You can't send my personnel files to some guy you barely know. It's just for reference, he said. He needed a sample for the bid format. It's harmless. Harmless? I stepped back, shaking my head. You gave my service record to a civilian contractor I've never met, and you think it's harmless? He frowned, defensive now. You're overreacting. He's family. No, I said flatly. He's marrying into the family. Big difference. He looked like he wanted to argue, but he didn't. He just picked up the rag again and started wiping the car door, the universal sign for conversation over. Inside the house, Mom was arranging flowers on the dining table. Rachel, I didn't know you were coming by. I figured I'd surprise everyone, since you're all so good at keeping secrets. Her smile tightened. Don't start. I'm not starting. I'm just trying to understand why my sister's getting married in 6 weeks and I had to find out from Instagram. It's complicated, she said. Vanessa's had a hard time since Eric left. She just wants a new beginning. Evan makes her happy. I'm glad someone does. Please, she said quietly. Don't ruin this for her. I stared at her for a long moment. You really think me showing up would ruin it? She wants peace, Mom said. You've been through a lot. We just thought maybe sitting this one out would be easier. Easier for them, maybe. I looked around the living room. Same furniture, same smell of cinnamon and coffee, same wall of framed photos, Vanessa's college graduation, Vanessa's kids, Vanessa's cafe opening. Not a single picture of me in uniform. I'll make it easy, I said finally. I won't come. I won't call. I won't ruin her peace. Mom's mouth opened, but no sound came out. I walked past her, down the porch steps, and out to my Jeep. On the drive back, I didn't cry or yell. I just felt the kind of quiet that hums in your chest when something permanent breaks. I pulled into my driveway, cut the engine, and sat there until the sunset bled into the Rockies. The house was still, the kind of still that makes you hear your own heartbeat. Inside, I opened my laptop and scrolled through the wedding posts again. Everyone smiling, everyone included. I hovered over the unfollow button on my sister's page, then tapped it. One by one, I did the same with every relative. Mom, Dad, cousins, aunts. Each tap felt like releasing something heavy I'd been carrying for years. By the time the last name disappeared, the screen was blank except for my reflection. I looked tired, older than 36, but lighter somehow. Outside, the street was quiet. A single porch light glowed across the road. I stood there a moment, phone in hand, before setting it face down on the table. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was the first peace I'd had in a long time. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. The air in my house still cool and sharp. The Jeep keys were already in my hand before I realized what I was doing. Logic said to let it go, but something in me refused to sit quietly while my family rewrote me out of existence. The drive to Littleton took an hour, long enough for regret to try and talk me out of it. It didn't win. The Victorian house looked smaller than I remembered. The paint had started to peel, and the porch swing hung crooked, one chain shorter than the other. I stood on the curb a few seconds, staring at it like a stranger's home. Then I went up and knocked. My mom opened the door with a face halfway between surprise and performance. Rachel! I didn't expect you again so soon. Yeah, I said. I'm full of surprises lately. The living room was the same, too many knickknacks, faint smell of cinnamon candles, and that framed, "Family is forever," quote, hanging above the fireplace like an inside joke. Coffee? She offered. I'm good. She smoothed her hair and gestured toward the table covered with lace samples and color swatches. We're just finalizing some of the decorations. Vanessa wants soft golds and whites. It's elegant, don't you think? I stared at the pile. Looks expensive. Well, Evan's taking care of most of it, she said quickly, like she needed to justify it. He's done well for himself, works in logistics, very ambitious. I sat down, resting my elbows on the table. I bet. Ambitious enough to use my service record for his defense contracts? The mug in her hand froze halfway to her mouth. What are you talking about? Dad told me, I said flatly. You gave him my army paperwork. My citation. You thought I wouldn't find out? Her lips tightened. It wasn't classified, Rachel. He just needed an example. An example? I laughed once, sharp and humorless. Mom, that's government property. You don't hand that over to some guy you barely know because he's marrying your favorite daughter. Don't start, she said, voice brittle. You always make things sound worse than they are. Because they usually are. Before she could answer, my dad came in from the garage, wiping his hands on a rag. He froze when he saw me. Rachel. Hey, Dad. You two planning to auction off the rest of my army files or just the good parts? His jaw tightened. Watch your tone. No. You watch yours. I stood. You took my name and gave it to a man you barely know. You let him use it to impress investors. Do you realize how illegal that could be? It's not illegal, he said too fast. He just wanted to understand the format. That's all. That's not all, I shot back. And you know it. Mom stepped between us. Rachel, please. Vanessa doesn't need this kind of stress right now. I stared at her, disbelief turning into something colder. You think this is about stress? You think I'm the problem here? Evan's been good to her, she insisted. After everything she's been through, she deserves a fresh start. Yeah, I remember her last fresh start, I said. It cost me $22,000. Mom's face hardened. She was struggling. She was irresponsible, I corrected. And you let her stay that way. Stop it, my dad said, his voice low. You're turning this into a fight it doesn't need to be. It already is one. He looked tired suddenly, like a man who'd spent decades patching leaks only to watch the roof cave in. We did what we thought was best. For who? I asked quietly. Because it sure as hell wasn't for me. Oh, the clock on the mantel ticked too loud. My mother looked like she wanted to cry, but she didn't. She just straightened a napkin on the table that didn't need straightening. I wish you'd understand, Rachel. We've had to hold this family together. Yeah, I said, by cutting out the one person who actually could have helped. I turned and walked toward the door, but something in me hesitated. I wasn't done yet. You know, I said, glancing back, the Army trains us to recognize manipulation. You can call it keeping the peace, or protecting Vanessa, but it's really just control. You've been doing it my whole life. Mom's hand trembled around the coffee mug. Dad looked at me like I'd just said something obscene. I stepped outside and took a breath that felt like air after a long deployment. The kind that burns on the way in but clears your head. My phone buzzed. A text from Tara, my best friend, and the only person who didn't treat me like I needed fixing. Beer tonight? Or demolition therapy? I smiled a little. Both. The bar was half empty when I got there. Tara was already sitting at the counter, hair pulled back, work badge still clipped to her collar. So, she said, handing me a beer. You do the family visit? Yeah. And? They're still the same, she snorted. Meaning full of denial and passive aggression? Pretty much. I took a drink. Mom thinks I'm too intense. Dad thinks I overreact. Apparently, Evan's a saint now. Now, Tara raised an eyebrow. The guy who brags about his government contracts every time he opens his mouth? Yeah, that one. Guess what? My dad gave him copies of my army commendations. Her jaw dropped. You're kidding. Nope, apparently it's just a reference. That's not a reference. That's fraud. I nodded slowly. Yeah, I know. We sat in silence for a minute, the bar's jukebox humming some old country song about heartbreak and second chances. Tara leaned in. So what are you gonna do? Nothing, I said, surprising even myself. Not yet. Since when do you do nothing? Since it stopped making a difference. She studied me for a second, like she was looking for cracks. You're serious? Yeah. Let them have their perfect wedding. Let them play happy family. I'm done trying to fix people who enjoy being broken. Tara clinked her glass against mine. That's new for you. Feels weird, I admitted. But good weird. Nat. When I got home that night, I sat in the dark living room again. The silence didn't feel heavy this time. Just quiet. Clean. I scrolled through my phone and deleted every text thread with my parents. Not out of anger, just finality. Outside, a summer storm rolled over the mountains, thunder rumbling in the distance. I could smell the rain before it hit. I opened the window and let the air in, cool and sharp, like the world was resetting itself. For the first time in a long time, I didn't reach for my uniform hanging in the closet or the files on my desk. I didn't plan or strategize. I just sat there, breathing, letting the storm pass. When lightning flashed across the sky, I caught my reflection in the glass, steady, expressionless, but alive. Somewhere out there, my sister was trying on her veil, planning centerpieces, smiling for photos that didn't include me. And for the first time, that thought didn't sting. It just was. The next morning, I found myself sanding the edge of an old oak table in my workshop. It was something I'd salvaged from a farmhouse slated for demolition. The wood was rough, scarred, but solid underneath. Kind of like me, I guess. The phone buzzed again, another tag, another wedding update. I didn't open it. I just kept sanding, slow and steady, until the surface turned smooth beneath my palms. When I looked up, sunlight was spilling across the bench, golden and warm. The world kept turning, and I realized maybe I didn't need an invitation to start moving forward. The table was finished by the weekend. Smooth as glass, sealed with linseed oil, every scar in the wood darkened into something almost beautiful. I stood there staring at it longer than I should have, hands resting on the grain, thinking how quiet the world gets when no one expects anything from you. That quiet didn't last long. My neighbor, Mrs. Hayes, caught me in the driveway later that morning, holding a casserole like a peace offering. "Welcome home, Captain," she said. "Saw your sister's engagement pictures online. Must be exciting." "Yeah," I said. "Real exciting." She frowned, reading between the lines. "You're not going?" "Wasn't invited." Her face did that sympathetic scrunch people use when they don't know what else to say. "Families," she muttered. "Can't live with them. Can't get a restraining order fast enough. I profit." I almost laughed. Almost. Inside, the house was too clean. I'd organized every drawer, scrubbed the tile grout, even alphabetized the spices. That's what happens when you've got military discipline and nothing to aim it at. I turned on the radio just to fill the space. The host was talking about summer storms and real estate prices, normal stuff. I clung to it like oxygen. By noon, I was elbows deep in another project, restoring an old front door I'd bought from a salvage yard. Every scrape of the sander drowned out the noise in my head. The vibration numbed my hands. The smell of sawdust and varnish took me back to deployments where fixing something broken was the only kind of peace you could get. My phone buzzed on the workbench. I almost didn't check it. Then I saw the name Tara. "You alive?" "Barely," I texted back. She sent a photo of a six-pack. Cure for that. By sunset, she was sitting on my porch, feet up on the railing, beer sweating in her hand. "You're nesting," she said, looking around at the tools stacked in neat rows. "Therapy's expensive," I said. "Yeah, but sawdust doesn't give feedback." "That's why it works." She smirked. "So what's the plan now, General?" "Captain," I corrected. "And there is no plan. I'm sitting this one out." "You?" she said. "The woman who once built a bridge under fire because command didn't have the resources? You're just gonna sit?" "Pretty much." Tara studied me for a moment. "You ever wonder if maybe this is exactly what they want? For you to disappear, stay quiet, stop being the one who calls out their bullshit?" "Sure," I said. "But it's working out great for everyone involved." We didn't talk about it after that. We just sat there, watching the sun dip behind the mountains, two soldiers retired from different wars. When she left, the silence returned. It wasn't peaceful anymore, it was heavy, the kind that crawls under your skin. I tried to distract myself with small things. Morning runs, grocery store trips, cooking actual meals instead of living off takeout. For a few days, it worked. Then, the universe, or whatever cosmic comedian runs it, decided to remind me who I was dealing with. It started with an email. Subject line, "Family update, Vanessa and Evan's big day." Some cousin had set up a group thread filled with cheerful updates, cake tastings, seating charts, links to the venue's Instagram. I scrolled until I hit the bottom, where my mom had commented, We're so proud of them. It's going to be the most beautiful wedding in Aspen Creek history. Aspen Creek. That name landed like a gut punch. The same lodge where our uncle's funeral reception had been held. The one where I'd carried chairs in the snow while everyone else cried and drank cocoa inside. Some things never change. I do the heavy lifting, and they take the credit. I closed the laptop, but the image of that mountain resort stuck in my head. Big white hall, chandeliers, perfect views. The kind of place built for photos, not people. I didn't tell Tara about the email. I didn't tell anyone. But that night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the ticking clock, every second dragging me somewhere I didn't want to go. Around midnight, I grabbed my phone. My thumb hovered over Vanessa's contact for a full minute before I locked the screen and set it face down again. I didn't call her. I didn't text. I just let the silence stretch out until it filled the room. 2 days later, I got a call from my unit. A short-term consulting assignment in Texas, nothing major, just equipment oversight. I said yes before the guy even finished asking. A week away sounded better than sitting around pretending I wasn't angry. The work was easy, routine. Inspecting vehicles, running logistics, correcting errors from people who didn't double-check anything. Familiar territory. It grounded me, at least for a while, until I got to the hotel one night, turned on the news, and there it was. Exclusive, high-profile wedding in Aspen Creek draws attention from defense circles. The screen showed a quick pan of the venue: white tents, champagne glasses, smiling faces. Then a brief interview with a local vendor. They said the groom worked with the Army. Contracts and stuff. He was super generous. I turned the volume down, stared at the crawl at the bottom of the screen. The words blurred, but I caught enough. Evan Beckett, defense logistics consultant, to wed Vanessa Monroe this weekend. So he was telling people he worked with the Army. My stomach tightened, the kind of tension that comes before a mission goes sideways. I told myself to let it go again, but my mind was already pulling threads, calculating risk, assessing fallout. I grabbed my laptop, opened the contractor registry, and typed his name. Nothing came up. Then I searched the company he bragged about: Beckett Logistics Group. Registered 2 years ago. Listed address? A P.O. box in Boulder. A defense contractor with no physical office and no federal ID number. That wasn't just shady. It was criminal. I leaned back in the chair, rubbing my temples. Maybe he was just lying to impress people. Maybe he wasn't dumb enough to forge documents. But the thought of my name showing up on one of his contracts made my skin crawl. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. I emailed myself the search results, just in case. Then I closed the laptop and went to bed, eyes wide open in the dark. The next morning I was back on base, double-checking vehicle logs, pretending I hadn't spent half the night staring at the ceiling. The sergeant next to me was talking about his cousin's wedding. Something about open bars and bad DJs. I forced a laugh at the right time. When the assignment ended, I drove straight home, trying not to think about Aspen Creek Lodge or the smiling couple in that news segment. My house felt different when I walked in. Too clean, too still. I turned on the kitchen light, then turned it off again. Somewhere, hundreds of miles away, my family was toasting to a future they thought was spotless. I poured a glass of water, took a sip, and stood by the window. The Rockies were a dark line against the horizon. The night sky spread wide and cold. For a brief second, I thought about calling my mom just to hear her voice, to confirm they hadn't forgotten what honesty sounded like. But I didn't. I just stood there, staring into that quiet stretch of mountains, trying to decide if peace really was the same thing as silence. The phone buzzed on the counter. A message preview flashed across the screen. From Tara. You seeing this? The link beneath it read, Defense Contractor's Wedding Turns into National Scandal. I didn't open it right away. I just stood there, staring, the air around me suddenly too still. The first thing I heard was glass shattering somewhere in the background of the video. Then a woman screaming. The kind of sound that cuts through you before you even understand why. My hand froze above the phone, but the screen kept playing. It was grainy footage from someone's phone, shot in a ballroom filled with white roses and chandeliers. The caption underneath said, Aspen Creek Lodge, moments ago. Vanessa stood in the center, mascara streaked, her wedding dress bunched in her fists. Evan, her perfect, polished husband, loomed over her, face red, shouting something the phone's mic couldn't quite catch. Then he swung. The crack of his hand across her cheek was so loud it drowned everything else out. The crowd gasped. Someone screamed. The camera jerked. Then the clip ended. For a second, I couldn't breathe. The screen blurred as my pulse roared in my ears. I blinked once, twice, trying to process what I'd just seen. Then I watched it again. And again. It didn't change. The messages were already flooding in. Tara. Oh my God. Are you seeing this? Marcus from work. Your family's all over the news. Even Mrs. Hayes. Dear, Channel 9 just said your sister's wedding turned into a police situation. I turned on the TV. There it was, local anchors in press suits standing in front of the same lodge I'd seen in the video. Behind them, flashing lights, police tape, guests milling around in shock. Breaking news, the anchor said. Authorities were called to Aspen Creek Lodge this evening after reports of an assault during the wedding of defense contractor Evan Beckett and his bride, Vanessa Monroe. Witnesses claim an argument between the couple turned violent, leading to the groom being detained at the scene. They replayed the footage, this time from another angle, clearer, steadier. Evan's face was unmistakable. So was my sister's. The slap echoed through the speakers again. I muted the TV and sat back, staring at the silent chaos on the screen. The first feeling wasn't rage. It wasn't even shock. It was that old, bitter exhaustion that hits you when something inevitable finally happens. Like watching a slow-motion car crash you warned everyone about. My phone rang. Mom. I let it buzz until it stopped, then started again. Same caller ID. I stared at it until it went to voicemail. A minute later, it rang again. I picked up. Yeah. Her voice came through choked with tears. Rachel, it's Vanessa. She's hurt. You have to come. I closed my eyes. Where is she? At the hospital in Boulder. Please, she needs you. I gripped the phone tighter. I wasn't invited to the wedding, remember? This isn't about that, she pleaded. She's your sister. I said nothing. She didn't mean for this to happen, Mom continued. He just snapped. The police took him. She's in shock. She keeps asking for you. Yeah? I said quietly. Funny. She didn't ask for me last month when she was picking out centerpieces. Rachel, please. Mitt. I'm sorry she's hurt, I said, voice flat. But I'm not the person who can fix this. Her breath hitched. You always fix things. Not anymore. I hung up. The silence afterward felt heavier than anything I'd ever carried in uniform. I walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and stared out the window. My reflection looked back, eyes hollow, jaw tight. Somewhere out there, my family was probably gathered in a waiting room, crying over the mess they'd built. And they'd expect me to come clean it up, because that's what I do. That's what I've always done. Not this time. The TV behind me cut to a new headline. Defense contractor under investigation for fraudulent military claims. That made me turn around. The news reporter read from a teleprompter. Sources say authorities are now looking into allegations that Beckett falsified military affiliations to secure several defense logistics contracts. The investigation is ongoing. I felt my chest tighten. My phone buzzed again. Tara this time. You need to see this. Check your email. I opened it. There was a link to a forum post from a whistleblower site that specialized in exposing government contract fraud. The post was anonymous but detailed screenshots of falsified credentials, fake DoD paperwork, even sample contracts under Beckett's company name. And right there, in the attachments, was my name. Captain Rachel Monroe, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. He'd used my record, my real service history, my commendations, my identity. The room seemed to tilt. My vision tunneled, the edges going white. I dropped into a chair, reading line after line of documents that looked horrifyingly legitimate. My old deployment numbers, my base designations, even the year I was promoted, all used as references for his work. I opened another file. His bid proposal for a military supply route contract. The signature at the bottom wasn't mine, but the forged letterhead sure as hell was. I whispered to the empty room. You stupid son of a bitch. The air felt electric, like before a blast. Every muscle in my body went rigid, my hands shaking not from fear, but from something sharper, anger with direction. I called Tara. She picked up before the first ring finished. You saw it? Yeah. They're saying he forged active duty credentials. Used your record as a model for his. That's federal level stuff, Rachel. I know. What are you gonna do? I didn't answer right away. My mind was already working, organizing evidence, mapping the steps. First, I need to verify everything. Then I'm calling someone who knows how to handle this. Daniel? Yeah. Major Daniel Cross. Former logistics officer. Smart, stubborn, and probably the only man I trusted with both paperwork and secrets. Be careful, Tara said quietly. This guy's not just some cheating husband. If he forged federal documents, he's connected to people who can cover for him. I've dealt with worse, I said. After we hung up, I paced the kitchen. Every instinct from deployment kicked in the methodical calm before action. I opened a drawer, grabbed my old field notebook, and started writing down everything I knew. Dates, names, company info, the fake contracts. I printed the screenshots, slipped them into a folder. Outside, rain started to fall, steady and cold. I left the window open, letting the smell of wet earth cut through the air. My house was quiet again, but this time it didn't feel like peace. It felt like the kind of silence before a detonation, the stillness right before something big changes shape. I sat down, looked at the folder in front of me, and exhaled slowly. Vanessa's wedding had turned into a viral scandal. The man she married was now a criminal investigation headline. My name was tangled in his mess. And somewhere in that wreckage, my family was pretending they didn't know how it happened. I picked up the folder, tucked it under my arm, and walked toward the door. The storm outside hadn't let up, but I didn't wait for it to pass. The rain hadn't stopped by morning. It came down steady, like the sky couldn't make up its mind about being angry or tired. I brewed coffee, black and burnt the way I liked it, and stood by the window, with the folder still open on the counter. My name sat printed across the top of a fake government contract in crisp Arial font, like a joke no one was laughing at. The phone rang again, unknown number. I didn't answer. Then it buzzed a second time. Mom's voicemail came through before it stopped. I didn't listen. But the third time, she used a different phone. When I finally picked up, all I heard was chaos, muffled sobbing, hospital beeps, someone shouting instructions in the background. Rachel, Mom gasped. It's your sister. She's in bad shape. She's asking for you. Please. I didn't speak. She needs you, she said again. I know you're angry, but this isn't about that. Please. Angry wasn't the word. Detached, maybe. Empty. I pressed the phone against my ear until the static faded. What hospital? Boulder Community. Room 214. Fine. When I hung up, I stared at the folder again. Evan's forged paperwork, the fake contracts, my stolen identity, it all sat there waiting. The Army teaches you to prioritize in crisis. People first, mission second. But this wasn't war, it was family. And somehow, that made it messier. The drive to Boulder was slow, slick with rain. The hospital lot was half flooded, full of news vans and camera crews. I pulled my hood up and walked straight through the entrance, ignoring the reporters yelling, "Are you related to the bride?" At the nurse's station, I gave my name. Monroe. Rachel. I'm here for Vanessa Beckett. And one. The nurse hesitated, eyes flicking to the security guard nearby. Immediate family only. I'm her sister, I said, sharper than I meant to. The guard stepped aside. The nurse gestured toward the elevator. Second floor, left wing. When I opened the door to room 214, Mom was sitting by the bed, face pale, hands shaking around a paper cup. Vanessa lay half asleep, an ice pack on her jaw, her once perfect hair a tangle of wedding day ruin. Mom's head shot up. You came. Entry. Apparently, I'm still family. She flinched at the tone, but didn't argue. Vanessa opened her eyes. Rachel? Yeah. Her voice was raspy. He's gone. I saw. She tried to sit up, wincing. They said he used your name. For his contracts. I didn't know, I swear. I studied her face. The bruising was real. The fear behind her eyes even more so. You really didn't? She shook her head. He said he worked with the Army, that he had connections. I thought he meant suppliers, not this. End quote. Mom started crying again. He fooled all of us. No, I said. He fooled you. I'm the one he stole from. The room went quiet except for the monitors. Vanessa's lip trembled. What happens now? Now? I looked at the Ford drip, the sterile walls, the bouquet of wilted white roses on the nightstand. Now I fix what he broke. Her eyes widened. You're going after him? I'm reporting him. Mom gripped the cup tighter. Rachel, maybe wait. Let the police. The police don't investigate defense fraud. The FBI does. She went pale. You can't drag the family into that. They already dragged me, I said. Outside, thunder rolled again, low and distant. I turned toward the door. Get some rest. You'll need it. Vanessa called out as I left. Thank you. I didn't answer. Back in the hallway, I texted Tara. He used my record. I'm going to need backup. She replied almost instantly. Who's our first call? Danielle Cross. It had been 2 years since I last saw Major Cross. He'd left the service to work in military compliance, the kind of job that requires equal parts brain and backbone. I still had his number saved under Crossfire. When he picked up, his voice was calm, steady. Captain Monroe, it's been a while. I need your help, I said. Judging by your tone, not the kind that involves coffee. Ever heard of Beckett Logistics Group? He paused. Yeah, fraud complaints started trickling in last month. Nothing solid yet. Why? He used my Army file, my credentials. He forged DoD contracts with my name. Daniel whistled low. That's serious. You got proof? I have more than proof. I've got paperwork. Then you've got leverage. I don't want leverage, I said. I want this bastard buried under federal charges. Good, he said. Because if what you're saying checks out, that's identity theft, contract fraud, and federal misrepresentation. You could build a case airtight enough to make the FBI salivate. I don't care if they salivate, I said. I care if they act. They will, but we'll need to set it up right. You can't just walk into a field office waving papers. I know how procedure works, Major. He chuckled. Yeah, but I also know you, and patience isn't your strong suit. I'm learning, I said dryly. He told me to scan the documents, upload them to a secure folder, and send him access. I'll run it through contacts at Federal Procurement. Quietly. Quietly's good, I said. My family's already on the news. Then make sure you stay off it, he said, for now. After the call, I scanned every page of Evan's fake contracts, every screenshot, every reference to my service record. My printer hummed like a small engine, steady and rhythmic. By the time I finished, the rain had stopped. Tara showed up an hour later with Thai takeout and a flash drive. Cross got back to you? Yeah. He's on it. Good. Because Twitter's eating your sister alive. I frowned. What do you mean? She flipped open her laptop and showed me the trending page. Number wedding scandal. Number fake contractor. And worse, number army bride. Someone had leaked screenshots from the investigation, probably a guest trying to cash in. My name wasn't public yet, but it was only a matter of time. Tara glanced at me. You okay? I stared at the screen. Vanessa's photo flashed under headlines about deceit and abuse. It didn't look like justice. It looked like spectacle. I'm fine, I said finally. You don't look fine. I've seen worse press coverage. She closed the laptop. You can't fix the internet. Just make sure the right people hear the truth first. I will. When she left, I stood at the window again, the city lights cutting through the wet pavement. My reflection stared back at me, calmer than I expected. I'd spent years serving a system built on order, procedure, and integrity. Now someone had taken all that and smeared it across a wedding scandal. I turned off the light, leaving only the glow from the street outside. The silence didn't feel empty anymore, it felt like focus. I grabbed my phone, opened my email, and typed, Major Cross, file uploaded, verify everything. Then I hit send. By sunrise, my inbox was full of files from Daniel. He didn't waste time, never did. The subject line read, Initial verification, Beckett case. I opened it while the coffee brewed, the machine hissing like it shared my mood. The report was short and brutal. Confirmed. Falsified Department of Defense documents submitted under Beckett Logistics Group. 2 contracts pending investigation. 1 already funded. The funded one was the problem. It meant Evan had already taken government money using my credentials. My name, my record, my reputation stamped across a fraud file. I called Daniel. "Tell me this can be cleaned up quietly." He exhaled. "It can't. This crossed into federal territory the minute he received funds. The Bureau's going to have to take it. So how long until they do?" "Depends," he said. "They'll want airtight evidence. Chain of custody, financial records, witness testimony. Right now, what you've got proves identity theft, but not intent. We need someone on the inside, someone who worked for him." End quote. That narrowed it down to exactly 0 people I trusted. "I might have a lead," I said. "Who?" "One of his old security contractors. Travis Cole. He left the company last year. Word is, he walked out after a disagreement." Daniel hummed. "Find him, but do it smart. These guys cover their tracks." I was already scrolling through my contacts. Travis's name popped up under a list labeled Past Operations. He'd worked security at one of the bases in Kabul before going private. Tough guy, quiet, sharp enough to know when to run. When I called, he picked up on the 3rd ring. "Monroe. Been a while." "You're good with voices," I said. "Some don't fade. What do you need?" "Information. About Evan Beckett." There was a pause, then a low chuckle. "Didn't take long, huh?" "Meaning?" I wondered when someone from the Army would start calling. Guy's been dirty since day 1. Used to brag about his military pipeline. Said he had a friend in uniform who vouched for his credentials. My stomach clenched. "He used my name." Travis whistled. "Well, that explains the paperwork I saw." "What paperwork?" "He had files with official seals, ID numbers, commendation letters looked legit. Said they were examples from his Army consultant partner. I knew it stank, but I wasn't about to get dragged into a felony. When I confronted him, he told me to back off. Threatened me, actually. That's why I quit." You kept copies?" "A beat. Then, yeah. Insurance policy. In case he tried to bury me." "Travis, I need those files." He hesitated. "This gonna blow back on me?" "Not if we do it right. Meet me at the diner on 6th and Maple. Noon." I hung up and texted Daniel. "Got a source. Meeting him today." He replied instantly. "Record everything. No exceptions." The diner was the kind of place where time stopped somewhere in 1982 vinyl booths, stale coffee, jukebox humming low. Travis sat in the corner, ball cap pulled low, shoulders still broad enough to fill the seat. "Monroe," he said as I slid into the booth. "You look the same. Meaner, maybe? Comes with promotion." He smirked. "You didn't come here for small talk." "Nope." He pulled a flash drive from his jacket pocket and set it on the table. "Everything I took before I quit. Emails, invoices, scanned documents, one folder labeled contracts. You're gonna love that one." I slipped it into my jacket. "You trust me that much?" "I trust my gut," he said. "And my gut says Beckett's about to go down hard." I paid for both coffees and left without looking back. Outside, the sky was bright, too calm for the storm brewing in my head. Back home, I plugged in the flash drive. Hundreds of files popped up, spreadsheets, scanned IDs, even correspondence between Evan and what looked like procurement officers. Except the email domains weren't government ones. They were mock-ups, fake addresses with one letter swapped, the kind of trick that fools investors who don't double-check. Halfway through the folders, I found a PDF titled Verification Packet, U.S. Army Logistics. My hand went cold as I opened it. There it was again, my signature, my badge number, my promotion date. A perfect copy. I zoomed in on the digital signature line. The forgery was good, almost flawless, but not perfect. The timestamp used the wrong format, month divided by day divided by year instead of the Army's standard day divided by month divided by year. That was the break I needed. I emailed the file to Daniel with one line. "Timestamp error confirms forgery." Within minutes, he called back. "Beautiful catch. That'll hold up. I'll forward this to the Bureau's procurement division. They'll open a case file tonight." "Good. Make sure they know my name stays off the press." He hesitated. "You might not get that luxury." Beckett's arrest went viral. Everyone's digging for background. If they find out your credentials were involved, it's going to leak. I rubbed my forehead. Then we make sure they have the truth before anyone else gets creative with it. Daniel's voice softened. You still protecting your family? I didn't answer. He already knew. After we hung up, I sat back in the chair. The folder of evidence sat open on my screen, lines of numbers and forged seals staring back at me. Outside, kids played basketball down the street, their laughter carrying through the open window. Normal life, miles away from the mess I was cleaning. The printer spat out each page as I compiled everything into a single binder. Military procedure dies hard. 1 file for digital records, 1 hard copy, 1 secured duplicate. I labeled it Case 09, Beckett Fraud. The sound of my phone vibrating broke the rhythm. It was my father. Rachel, he said, his voice strained. You've been talking to people. What are you doing? Cleaning up your mistake, I said. What mistake? The one where you handed over my service record to a con artist. He sighed. It wasn't supposed to go this far. He said it was just for a bid format. You keep saying that like it makes it less illegal. Don't make this harder, he said, low and defensive. Your mother's losing sleep. The neighbors are talking. Good, I said. Maybe shame will keep her awake long enough to realize she raised 2 adults, not 1 princess and 1 fixer. He didn't respond, just heavy breathing through the line. You think you're doing the right thing, Rachel. But this is going to destroy us. I looked at the binder. No. This is what saving looks like. You just don't like the view. I hung up and shut off the phone before he could reply. For a long time, I sat in the quiet hum of my office. The smell of burnt coffee drifted from the kitchen. The evidence binder sat neatly on the desk, a monument to every lie I'd been forced to swallow. Outside, the rain had finally stopped. The air smelled clean again. I picked up the binder, slid it into my backpack, and walked out the door without locking it behind me. I parked in front of my house just as the sun slipped behind the foothills. The sky was blood orange, that thin line between day and dark when everything looks sharper. Aunt Rose's car was already in the driveway. She texted me earlier. They're coming to talk. No one had asked if I agreed to it. That was how my family operated: announce first, apologize later. I walked inside to the smell of brewed coffee and tension. Aunt Rose sat at the dining table with her notebook open, her glasses perched low. You ready? She asked, not looking up. As I'll ever be. She nodded toward the binder on my counter. That, the evidence? Yeah. Good. Keep it visible. I almost smiled. Rose had been the only one in the family who didn't pretend wrong was right if it came from blood. She'd been a nurse for 30 years, saw too many families destroy each other with silence. When the doorbell rang, she didn't move. Your show, she said. I opened the door to find all 3 of them standing there: Mom, Dad, and Vanessa. They looked like they were attending a funeral no one wanted to admit was theirs. Vanessa's bruises had faded to yellow, makeup doing the rest. Mom clutched her purse like it contained her spine. Dad wouldn't meet my eyes. Come in, I said. My voice sounded calm, steady, military calm. They shuffled past me into the dining room. No hugs, no smiles. The only sound was the clinking of mugs as Rose poured coffee. Mom finally spoke first. Rachel, I'm so glad you agreed to see us. I didn't, I said. You came anyway. She gave a tight smile, pretending that line didn't land. We just want to clear the air. That's good, I said, pulling out the chair opposite them, because the air's been toxic for years. Vanessa looked down, twisting her fingers. I didn't know, Rachel. About the files, the contracts. He told me everything was legal. I swear. I believe you, I said. You were always a terrible liar. She flinched but didn't argue. Dad leaned forward, elbows on the table. We know Evan forged those documents. But dragging the FBI into it, do you have any idea what that's going to do to this family? I do, I said. It's going to stop the lying. He exhaled hard through his nose. You've always been dramatic. Dramatic is what you call it when the truth makes you uncomfortable. Mom put a hand on his arm. We didn't mean to hurt you. You gave a stranger my service record, I said. You handed him my life like a brochure. Oh, he said it was just an example, she insisted. We didn't think he'd actually use it. That's your defense? I said. Ignorance? Her lips trembled. We thought we were helping Vanessa. She needed stability. The kids needed a father figure. I turned to my sister. And what did you need, Vanessa? She looked up slowly, eyes wet, but steady. I needed to believe I wasn't a failure again. The silence that followed was so thick, even the clock seemed to stop ticking. I opened the binder and laid out the documents, one by one. Forged contracts, fake seals, the timestamp error, the financial transfers. This, I said, tapping the first page, is identity theft. This, I pointed to another, is procurement fraud. Together, they carry about 40 years in federal prison. Mom gasped softly. Dad's jaw locked. Vanessa just stared. I kept going. Evan's name is all over it, but yours are too. Co-signers, guarantors, shared accounts. You weren't victims, you were participants. Maybe not knowingly, but legally, that's irrelevant. Dad slammed his palm on the table. You think you're better than us because you wear a uniform? No, I said evenly. I think I'm better because I don't use family as an excuse to break the law. Mom's eyes filled. Rachel, please, we can fix this. We'll pay you back. The house, the savings, whatever it takes. Not about the money, I said. It's about accountability. Hell. Accountability? She snapped. You sound like your father when he was still in the army. All rules, no heart. Dad looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. Rose cleared her throat. Maybe she got the best parts of both of you, she said quietly. Mom glared at her. This is family business, Rosa. Rose didn't flinch. So is decency. I turned another page and slid it toward my parents. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to transfer the side lot deed to my name. I'll sell it to recover the $82,000 I sent you under false pretenses. You'll sign it today. Mom looked horrified. That property's been in the family for... So has lying, I cut in. Dad's shoulders sagged. We'll sign. Mom turned to him, stunned. Hector! He met her eyes for the first time. It's time, Sin. She's right. The room went dead quiet again. Even Vanessa seemed too shocked to speak. I pulled the paperwork from my folder drafted that morning with Rose's help and laid it flat. It's a quitclaim deed, transfers ownership of the side lot, no tax penalties. You can sign and still keep the house. Mom's hands trembled as she picked up the pen. You're taking everything, she whispered. No, I said. I'm taking back what's mine. The pen scratched across the paper, a sound that felt like exorcism. Dad signed next, slower, deliberate. Rose notarized it on the spot. Vanessa stared at the table, motionless. When it was done, I gathered the pages and tucked them neatly into the binder. The weight in the room shifted like a pressure valve finally released. Mom looked up at me with eyes that didn't recognize me anymore. You're not the same girl who used to fix everything, she said softly. No, I said. You broke her. Vanessa finally spoke. What happens now? Now you rebuild, I said. Without shortcuts. Without lies. She nodded once, wiping her face. I'll figure it out. I know you will. Aunt Rose stood, gathering the mugs. That's enough for one day. As they left, Dad stopped at the door. He looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. For what it's worth, Rachel, he said. I'm sorry. Then prove it, I said. He nodded, eyes wet, and followed Mom and Vanessa out into the fading light. The door shut behind them with a sound that wasn't final, but firm. Rose poured fresh coffee and sat back down. You handled that better than most generals I've met. I wasn't aiming for victory, I said. Just truth. She smiled faintly. Truth's the hardest win. The binder sat between us, its corners damp from where my hands had been. For the first time since this started, I didn't feel anger buzzing in my chest. Just stillness. Heavy, necessary stillness. Rose reached across the table, tapped the binder once. Keep this safe. It's your insurance. But more than that, it's your line in the sand. Vis. I nodded. Outside, the porch light flicked on automatically. Through the window, I could see the faint reflection of my own face, tired, older, but unshaken. The kind of calm that doesn't need peace to exist. I closed the binder, took a long breath, and let the silence settle into the room like a verdict. 2 weeks later, the binder sat in an evidence bag with a federal seal on it. My living room looked more like an incident command post than a home file stacked neatly. Coffee half drunk, Laptop open to an email thread marked FBI Procurement Fraud Division. They'd moved fast once Daniel handed them the package. Evan was arrested again, this time not for assault, but for conspiracy, identity theft, and multiple counts of federal fraud. The part of me that still believed in systems almost felt relieved. The rest of me just felt tired. It wasn't just him in the crosshairs. His company assets were frozen, and the Bureau subpoenaed my parents' financial records within days. I didn't ask how they took it. I didn't need to. You can tell a lot from silence, and theirs was the kind that comes from realizing the world's no longer fooled. The day the news broke publicly, I was at the hardware store buying nails. The radio behind the counter switched to a local update. Federal investigators have confirmed the arrest of defense contractor Evan Beckett following allegations of falsified military contracts. Sources say documents linked to a serving Army officer were used to secure millions in funding. No charges have been filed against the officer involved, who is cooperating fully. The cashier looked up at me. Wild story, huh? Yeah, I said, tossing the receipt into the bag. Wild. 0. Outside, the air smelled like hot asphalt and rain about to happen. I sat in the Jeep for a minute, hands still on the wheel, and listened to the thunder roll somewhere over the mountains. For the first time, no one was calling me to fix anything. No one was begging for help. The quiet wasn't peaceful, but it was honest. That night, the phone rang again, Mom's number. I didn't pick up. Then a text. Your father collapsed. Hospital. I stared at the screen until it went dark. There wasn't even a question about whether I'd go. I just drove. By the time I reached Boulder, it was close to midnight. The parking lot lights made the rain shimmer like oil. Inside, the nurse pointed me to ICU room 9. Mom was sitting by the window, face drawn and pale. Vanessa was there too, her hands wrapped around a cup of untouched coffee. Mom looked up as I entered. He had a stroke, she said, voice barely above a whisper. They don't know how bad it is yet. End quote. I glanced at the monitor steady, beeping, too slow. Dad looked smaller than I remembered. The man who once taught me how to rebuild a carburetor now lay still, hooked to a dozen wires. Vanessa stood, uncertain. He asked for you before he passed out, she said. He wanted to apologize. I pulled a chair to the side of the bed. He can do it later, I said. Mom looked at me like she wanted to say something sharp, but it didn't come. There wasn't enough strength left for that kind of pride. The hours crawled. Machines hummed. Nurses came and went. Rain tapped against the window. At 3:15 a.m., the doctor came in. Quiet voice, tired eyes. He's stable, she said. But recovery will be slow. Mom nodded, tears finally falling. Vanessa sat down, shoulders trembling. I just stood there, hands in my pockets, watching the steady rise and fall of his chest. Relief mixed with guilt, then faded into something simpler acceptance. By morning, Mom had dozed off in the chair. I stepped into the hallway with Vanessa. The fluorescent lights made everything feel colder. I'm sorry, she said suddenly. For everything. I should have seen what Evan was doing. I should have listened to you. You couldn't, I said. You were too close. She nodded. The FBI called. They said I'm not being charged. They think I was manipulated. You were, I said. But it doesn't erase the choices. I know. She looked up, eyes red but clear. I'll fix it, somehow. Fixing doesn't always mean repairing, I said. Sometimes it's just stopping the damage. We walked outside together, into the weak morning light. The storm had passed, leaving puddles and the smell of wet pine. Vanessa hugged herself against the cold. You ever get tired of being right? All the time. She half laughed through tears. You were the only one who didn't buy his act. Everyone said I'd finally found stability. Land. Stability built on lies isn't stability, I said. It's a countdown. She nodded again, and I could see it the shift. Not the teary regret she wore for sympathy, but the real kind. The kind that makes you want to start over without shortcuts. 2 days later, I got a call from Daniel. He's been charged formally, he said. Wire fraud, falsification of records, impersonation of an officer, and misuse of federal funds. He's not getting out anytime soon. Good. My. The Bureau will probably need you to testify when it goes to trial. I'll be there. Rachel, he said, his voice softer now. You did everything right. But that doesn't mean it won't feel heavy. I know. He paused. You think your family's going to come out of this okay? Define okay. He chuckled. Alive, mostly honest, maybe talking again. Then yeah, I said. Eventually. After we hung up, I looked around the living room. The evidence binder was gone. The stacks of paper cleared. The space felt bigger, cleaner, but it wasn't empty. It held something new, space for air, for breathing without bracing. Later that evening, I drove out to Littleton again. The house looked different now, stripped of the illusion of control. Mom met me at the door, eyes tired but no longer cold. Your father's awake, she said. He asked me to give you this. She handed me an envelope, sealed with his handwriting across the front. I opened it. Inside, a single sheet of lined paper. His handwriting, shaky but deliberate. Rachel, I was proud of you long before I understood you. I just didn't know how to say it without making it sound like a command. I'm sorry. That was it. No signature. No flourish. Just the truth. I folded the letter, tucked it back into the envelope, and slid it into my pocket. Mom watched me carefully. He meant it, she said quietly. I know. For once, she didn't try to defend herself, or Vanessa, or anyone. She just stood there, hands folded, small but human again. I'm sorry too, she added. I believe you, I said, and I did. When I left, the sun was setting over the trees, warm and soft. I rolled the windows down on the drive home, letting the wind push through the quiet. Somewhere behind me, the wreckage was still smoldering: court dates, hospital visits, family repairs that would never fully heal. But ahead, the road was open, long and finally mine. The kind of quiet that used to feel like punishment now sounded like peace. The courthouse smelled like polished wood and nerves. Federal buildings always do. There's something about the air that makes you stand straighter, even when you're just there to tell the truth. I sat outside the courtroom, hands clasped over a folder that didn't need to exist anymore. The evidence was long since entered. The case was airtight, but keeping it close felt like armor. Across from me, Tara was scrolling through her phone, half bored, half guarded. You ready for this? She asked. I've been ready for months, I said. Daniel appeared a minute later, crisp suit, no tie, like someone who could look professional without pretending to care about it. They'll call you after the break, he said. U.S. Attorney's going to lead with the identity theft count, then the fraud charges. I nodded. And Beckett? Still smug, Daniel said. He thinks he can spin it. He always did. When the bailiff opened the doors, I followed Daniel in. The room was colder than it should have been: tall ceilings, fluorescent light cutting every shadow in half. Evan sat at the defense table, clean-shaven, wearing a navy suit that looked borrowed. He didn't look at me, but I could feel the weight of his presence. That kind of arrogance doesn't die easy. The judge entered, a tall woman with a stare that could slice steel. Court is now in session, the clerk said. The prosecution started with the timeline, Beckett logistics, forged credentials, the falsified Army records. Every slide on the projector carried my name in small print, Captain Rachel Monroe, proof that someone had tried to rewrite me. I didn't flinch. When they called me to the stand, the courtroom shifted slightly, a hum of curiosity moving through the benches. I raised my hand, swore the oath, and sat down. The prosecutor, a young man with too much gel in his hair, smiled politely. Captain Monroe, you served with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for how long? 10 years, I said. 2 deployments overseas, logistics and reconstruction. And you're currently serving in a consulting role? Yes. He nodded. Can you tell the court when you first realized your military record had been used without your permission? The night of Evan Beckett's wedding, I said. I saw a news segment linking his company to defense contracts. When I checked the Federal Registry, my credentials appeared in documents I never signed. He nodded again, walking the jury through the details: how I'd verified the forgeries, how the timestamp format proved it wasn't mine, how Travis Cole's testimony supported my claims. Then came the question I knew was coming. Why didn't you go public right away? Because I don't fight in public, I said. I fight where it matters on record. There was a pause. Even the stenographer looked up for a second. The prosecutor smiled faintly. No further questions. The defense attorney rose. Older man, silver hair, expensive watch. He had the calm of someone used to distorting facts into half-truths. "Captain Monroe," he said smoothly, "you have a history of leadership and discipline. Would you say you also have a strong sense of pride?" "Yes." "Would you also say that pride sometimes leads you to overreact?" I met his eyes. "Not when I have evidence." A few people chuckled quietly. The judge didn't. He adjusted his glasses. "You and Mr. Beckett's wife Vanessa are sisters, correct?" "Yes." "Was there tension between you two before her marriage?" "There was honesty," I said. "That's not the same thing." He gave a rehearsed smile. "You didn't attend the wedding?" "I wasn't invited." "So it's possible," he said, stepping closer, "that this case, this testimony is personal." I leaned forward slightly. "Everything's personal when someone steals your name." He blinked once, regrouped, then shuffled his papers. No further questions. The judge called for recess. The courtroom buzzed as people stood, stretched, whispered. Evan finally looked at me. His mouth curved into that same half-smile he wore in every press photo. I stared back, expression flat. He was smaller now, same height, but smaller. The kind of small that comes from being seen for what you are. After the break, the Bureau's forensic expert took the stand, confirming the forged metadata, the altered headers, the fake accounts. By the time they finished, there wasn't much left for the defense to twist. When the closing statements came, the prosecutor kept it short. "This case isn't about revenge," he said. "It's about integrity. The defendant didn't just defraud the government, he defrauded the people who built it. Captain Monroe served her country. Mr. Beckett used her service to steal from it." Evan's lawyer tried to argue stress, manipulation, poor advice, but it fell apart halfway through. Even he sounded tired by the end. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. I sat in the hallway with Tara and Daniel, drinking burnt coffee from a vending machine. No one spoke much. Sometimes silence is just waiting, wearing a different coat. When the bailiff finally came back, his face didn't give anything away. "Jury's ready." We filed in. The foreman stood, reading the verdict count by count. Guilty on all charges. Evan didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at the table, jaw twitching once. The judge's voice cut through the air. "Sentencing will proceed immediately." The prosecutor requested 15 years, minimum security, given cooperation. The judge disagreed. Intent was clear. Impact was severe. Her gavel came down. 25 years, no parole. That was it. No cheers, no gasps. Just the sound of finality landing like a closing door. Outside, reporters swarmed the courthouse steps. Microphones, cameras, flashing bulbs, all of it noise. Daniel handled most of it. Tara swore at one guy who got too close. I just kept walking. One reporter shouted, "Captain Monroe, was this justice or revenge?" I stopped long enough to look at him. "Those aren't opposites," I said, and kept moving. We reached the parking lot. The air smelled like summer rain again. Daniel lit a cigarette he didn't finish. "It's over," he said. "Nothing's ever over," I replied. He gave a small smile. "Maybe. But you did what most people don't, you finished what mattered." Tara crossed her arms. "So what now, Captain?" I opened the car door. "Now I go home." End of 6. The drive back to Littleton was quiet. The roads shimmered under the fading light. Somewhere along the highway, I passed a billboard with the American flag painted across it, and the words, integrity, duty, honor. Funny how those words mean everything until someone steals them. At a stoplight, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror, calm, older, unchanged in the ways that mattered. I wasn't angry anymore, just done carrying other people's damage. The light turned green, and I kept driving. The courthouse fading behind me like a bad memory that finally ran out of echoes. The first morning I woke up after the hearing, the house was quiet in a different way. Not empty, just done echoing. The kind of silence that doesn't demand to be filled. I made coffee. Same routine, same chipped mug, same window view of the mountains, only now. It didn't feel like watching from behind glass. The sun was still low, the air still cold, but for once, I didn't need to brace for anything. On the counter sat a stack of mail I'd been ignoring. I flipped through it absent-mindedly until one envelope stopped me. Plain white, no return address, handwriting unfamiliar. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Captain Monroe, I know I don't have the right to ask for anything, but I needed you to know I'm sorry. You were the one person I couldn't fool, and I hated you for it. Now I understand why. Effin' Beckett. No plea, no self-pity, just a statement. The words didn't move me, but they didn't anger me either. They just confirmed what I already knew. Some men only find honesty when there's nothing left to lose. I folded the letter and tossed it in the drawer. Let it sit there next to my old medals, reminders of things that meant something once. Around noon, I drove out to the small lot I'd taken back from my parents. The grass had gone wild, the old fence sagged, but the place had potential. I'd been thinking about what to do with it. Selling it felt too clean, too easy, so I didn't. Instead, I called Tara. You still know anyone at the Veterans Fund? Depends on what kind of trouble you're starting, she said. The good kind. I'm setting up a nonprofit. For women and vets who got conned, financially or otherwise. I've got the land. I just need help making it official. There was a pause. You're serious. Dead serious. She laughed softly. Well, damn. You really don't do half measures, do you? Never learned how. We spent the next week drafting paperwork, registering the organization, finding the right people to call. By the end of the month, the Monroe Integrity Fund existed on paper and in purpose. The tagline came from something Daniel had said once. Honor isn't inherited, it's chosen. I sent him the first copy of the mission statement. He called 5 minutes later. You sure about this? Yeah, I said. Feels right. He chuckled. You know, when I said you finished what mattered, I didn't mean start a whole new mission. You should have known better, I said. He laughed. Guess I did. Vanessa showed up that weekend. No makeup, no dramatics, just jeans, a hoodie, and the look of someone trying to make peace with herself. She stood by the fence, running a hand over the weathered wood. You're really doing it, she said. Doing something, I replied. I met with a counselor, she said quietly. They want me to help with victim outreach. Apparently surviving public humiliation qualifies as experience. I smiled a little. You'll be good at it. She nodded, looking out at the open space. You know, for a long time I thought you were just angry. But now I get it. You weren't mad because you hated us. You were mad because you still cared. Caring gets messy, I said. Yeah, she said. But it's better than pretending. End of chapter. We walked the lot together, marking where the small office would go, the benches, the flagpole. She wanted to plant a tree in the middle, something that could grow with the place. When we were done, we stood there in the dusk light, hands dirty, shoes caked with mud. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was something close. That night, I found my father's letter again. I read it once more, then folded it neatly and pinned it to the corkboard in my office between a photo of my first deployment and a blueprint of the new building. It looked right there, between what I'd survived and what I was building next. In the months that followed, the fund started small. We hosted workshops for veterans navigating financial scams, helped women leaving abusive marriages recover stolen assets, even partnered with a legal aid group in Denver. The work was steady, grounded, and brutally honest, just how I liked it. Reporters tried to frame it as a redemption story, but that wasn't what it was. Redemption implies guilt. What I felt wasn't guilt, it was clarity. The kind that comes after cleaning up a mess so big it finally stops defining you. One afternoon, I found myself back at the same diner where I'd met Travis Cole. He slid into the booth across from me, looking less haunted than before. Heard you're running a charity now, he said. Word travels fast. He shrugged. Vets talk, especially when one of us actually does something good. You could come work with us, I said. We could use someone who knows how to spot a fraud before it hits the system. He grinned. You offering me a job, Captain? Offering you a purpose, I said. He nodded slowly. I'll think about it. When he left, I stayed a while, sipping coffee gone cold. Through the diner window, the road stretched toward the horizon, bright under the afternoon Sunday. It felt different now, less like escape, more like direction. That evening, I stopped by my parents' house. Dad was home from the hospital, moving slow but upright. Mom had aged years and months, but her voice was calm again. The noise was gone. He handed me a small wooden box. Thought you should have this, he said. Inside were my old medals, the ones I'd shoved into drawers years ago. You kept them, I said. They were never mine to keep, he said. Mom smiled faintly. We're proud of you, Rachel. Not for what you did in court, for what you did after. I nodded, unable to find words that didn't sound small. Sometimes silence really is enough. Later, as I drove home, the sun dipped behind the Rockies, turning everything gold. I passed the new sign out front of the lot painted simple, no frills. The Monroe Integrity Fund, for those who refuse to be broken. I parked, got out, and stood by the fence. The wind picked up, brushing through the newly planted tree in the center of the yard. I thought about every moment that led here, every bruise, every betrayal, every hard truth. They didn't feel heavy anymore. They just felt earned. Justice, I realized, isn't a headline or a sentence. It's the quiet rebuilding after the storm, the way you carry on without bitterness, the way you refuse to let corruption define the story. As the last light faded, I locked the gate, hands steady, heart quiet. The softest revenge, it turns out, isn't rage. It's living honest.